What a great call you made to join us in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, coming to you from the studios that First Star Logistics provides for us as well, because today we have the Bengals legend, Cris Collinsworth. Great player, and I mean great. Big, could run. Ran unbelievable routes, could catch, could do it all. He was a size-speed ratio nightmare for the National Football League. Has gone on to be legendary broadcaster, 17 Emmys. Should call it the Collinsworth, not the Emmy. And, of course, Pro Football Focus. Everything you need to know about the sport of football at any level, check out Pro Football Focus. Cris Collinsworth talks about Florida winning the NCAA basketball championship. Has some interesting comments on that. He talks about playing high school basketball with his brother and high school football with his brother. Some of the youth sports stories are interesting with Cris Collinsworth at the microphone here today. Also, we get into some Bengal information, unrestricted free agency signings. He's got opinions on that. The upcoming draft, we talk about that. We dive into that a little bit. Pro Football Focus is all over that. Bottom line is, we talk football. We talk football with Cris Collinsworth. Nothing better. I know there's a lot going on in the sports world. Just crowned a national champion in the sport of college basketball, the Florida Gators. So for you to carve time to join us in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, is always greatly appreciated. And we're coming to you from our studio. That's one of one. They do an unbelievable job providing a place for us to work. Good workplace hopefully means good work. And we've got a guy that always does good work. His name, Cris Collinsworth, and he is a Cincinnati legend. Not only a great player, I could go on and on all day about the kind of player that Cris Collinsworth was at the wide receiver position. You talk about size, speed ratio. He invented it, man. This guy was bigger than everybody, faster than everybody. He was just one of those guys, man, a rare breed. There's no question about it, a genetic phenomenon. And he's gone on to the broadcast world, 17 Emmys. They got to rename it the Collinsworth, not the Emmy. It's the Collinsworth from now on. 17 of those bad boys. And also the majority owner of Pro Football Focus. Anything you need to know about football, any level, just check out Pro Football Focus. And we are proud that Cris Collinsworth and very appreciative of Cris Collinsworth joining us at this time. CC, what up, my man?
How are you, partner? What's going on?
So, how about them Gators? I was thinking about you last night, man. It's like, wow, the Gators.
I've never seen anything like that team. They were down almost double digits. I think it was 9, 11, and 12 the last 3 games. And to sit there and to actually kind of believe when they were down 12 that it wasn't over, earlier in the thing, maybe I was going like, okay, that's done. But that team had some pixie dust to them. I don't know exactly how it all worked out, but it was for Houston. It was brutal. Oh my gosh. But they were the beneficiary of that against Duke. No way Duke could lose that game.
Right.
And they come right back. I'm glad Florida didn't have to play Duke. I thought Duke was a really good team, man. They were good.
They had the best player. The best team with the best player. But as we know in the tournament, that always doesn't lead to a national championship. I think at one point, I know there was 1 minute and 30 seconds to play, and Florida had led for about 12 seconds in the game, and then down the stretch they win the thing. The last 4 possessions for Houston, they don't take a shot. They don't shoot the basketball. It was unbelievable.
They hadn't turned it over the whole game. And then all of a sudden they turn it over 4 straight times. And It was a strangely officiated game too. It was the first half. I go, Florida's dead. Florida cannot beat this team if they're just going to let every foul that was a big physical team. The officiating played right to them.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, it seemed like everything was called. And that really played to Florida's favor because they're such a good free throw shooting team, down the stretch for sure. And with Walter just filling it up every time he gets to the line. So fun night. It was a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling. And if you're only going to lead for a minute, I'll take the last minute.
No doubt. No doubt. And to your point, I think I heard this morning where in 3 different tournament games, Florida trailed by 9 points or more and came back and won every one of them. I mean, that's not an accident right there, man. That's something in the team's DNA right there, boy.
Something about it. It was fun. A lot of fun.
But with that said, as you look at unrestricted free agency, look at the NFL as a whole, position versatility is such a big deal. I mean, you have to be able to play more than one position in today's NFL. You really had to be able to play more than one position when we played too. I mean, there's only so many players. You have 40 whatever players active on game day. I mean, you can have attrition and be in trouble at a position pretty quickly. So you have to have guys that can play more than one position within a position group. And you were able to do that. I was able to do some of that. It to me, I think playing all the sports lends itself to being able to do that. It increases your athleticism, and but I think, a lot of these players that the Bengals re-signed, they're in their free agency class. They have 17 free agents. They re-signed 13, and they signed 4 from other franchises. And a lot of those 13 players were people that they drafted. So they draft, developed, and retained. But a big thing in that, with all these players that they signed, their own and others, is position versatility.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It really does, because, it used to be if you saw Troy Polamalu down in the box, you knew what was up. But now these guys can play so many different positions that Eman Moore, the kid out of South Carolina, is built like a linebacker, but he runs 4.38. He has a vertical jump of 43 inches and he's 6'3". Is that a linebacker in today's game? Yeah, kind of. Is that a strong safety? Yeah. Is that an outside corner? He can play there. Have you played man coverage in the slot? So it's like when you don't know who that player is. That Peyton Manning used to hate that they let people wear other numbers, that used to be DBs were assigned certain numbers, so he knew what they were. Now is number 4 a corner? Is number 4 a linebacker? Is number 4 a defensive tackle? At least in college football, you have no idea what these guys are, right? So, but it is, and you see it more and more clearly. Like Washington's a team that comes to mind immediately when they want that position versatility. They want safeties that look like linebackers and linebackers that look like safeties, and so that's it's a big part of the game right now.
So we both had the distinct honor of playing for Paul Brown. And Paul Brown's whole thing was identify talent, draft that talent that you believe in, develop that talent that you believe in, spend time with your coaches and organizational resources and money and all that stuff, developing that talent, and then retain it. Make sure that they stay with the organization. And Mike Brown believes, I think, in that in that mindset. They did dip into free agency pretty heavily, but they made sure that they retained their own. they paid, man, CC. If you had just waited a few years longer, brother. Chase and Higgins. This money's unbelievable. It's crazy. It's crazy. But they're still doing a pretty good job of identifying, drafting pretty well, retaining, developing these players and then retaining them. Not spending all this this franchise money and talent and developing these players. Let them go play for somebody else. After that first contract, they end up somewhere else, and other franchises benefit from it. they've got a pretty good process there of identify, draft, develop, retain.
I bet you Mike Brown about had a heart attack signing those checks, though. I mean, that was, and let's just break it down. So, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, there's no choice. You had to pay those guys whatever you got to pay them, and you just live with that, right? So to me, that's not even part of the discussion. I think Jamar is as good as any receiver I've ever seen play the game. I really do. And Joe, some of the ways he gets out of messes, he's under pressure. He's jumping up in the air. He's throwing. I just think he's a special guy.
Right.
So I take those two guys off the list. So then it really came down to, all right, what are we going to do with T. Higgins? What are we going to do with Trey Hendrickson? T. Higgins, you could see it, when those two guys are on the field together in the special relationship that he obviously has with Joe Burrow, both professionally and personally, so that's great. And we're all happy that he signed. I'm hopeful that Trey Hendrickson, think about what Trey Hendrickson did. What was the second highest number of sacks on the Bengals? He leads the league in sacks with 17 or whatever. Who was next? Somebody with 4?
Yeah. Yeah, he had over half the sacks. I mean, it was crazy by himself. He had 17 and a half, 2 straight years. 35 sacks, leads the NFL for the 2-year stretch. 17 and a half last year, leads the NFL. I mean, yeah, this guy, he's a problem out there, man.
So you think about it, not only are you not worried what's going on the interior, you're not worried about what's going on the other edge, and you still lead the league in sacks, and they know where he's going to line up. He's lining up on the offense's left side every single time, right? I mean, there's very seldom is he –
very rarely, yeah.
Moving around and doing anything. And so his problem is he's got a year left on the contract, I think. And so nobody in today's NFL is willing to pay somebody, the $40 million that Myles Garrett got, or what, one of those kind of contracts, and give up a first or a second round draft pick. Like, nobody can afford to do that. They've got their own stars that they're going to have to pay as they go along. So that's really where the dilemma is at this point. But I think the Bengals were smart. They said, Trey, hey, go test the market. They certainly didn't get offered a first round pick for a 30-year-old player, despite what he's done.
Right.
And, and he's a pass rusher, and they've struggled to stop the run too. Not that can't stop the run, but that's not his specialty. Right.
Yep.
So now let's say that they sign him, and I think they will. I think they'll end up signing him. I don't know how they're going to do it. So now basically you've got all your money put into 4 players, or probably half the salary cap that you're going to be dealing with. So now as fans, we have to sit back and go, okay, but I know what that means now. Now we're going to have a lot of first contract players sprinkled throughout this lineup, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to have issues. And we saw those mistakes last year in games early in the season. When Jamar Chase didn't go through camp, I don't think there's a chance that New England beats them if they have a normal training camp with Joe and Jamar, and they're ready to go on opening day, right? They're not. They get upset. They lose a fluke of a game at Kansas City, and you're playing behind the 8 ball the entire season. You really are. They catch some bad breaks. But I've also seen Peyton Manning and the Colts back in the day when they were great and they won a Super Bowl. They just put everything on the offensive side. They didn't care. They had Peyton Manning. They were going to score points, and then they were going to have 2 pass rushers on the other side that were, Freeney and Mathis.
Yep.
So you're going to be in a shootout every week.
Yep.
That's what the Bengals are probably going to be in now. So go get another pass rusher. Let's load up the offense. Let's see if we can win 41-38 and then just have a lot of fun watching it. What the hell?
I do agree about Trey Hendrickson, though. I think, like you said, the 1 year left on the deal. So, the one thing the Bengals have done is paid cash up front. They've had big bonus money in the front end of the contract, not pushing it back to the back end and deferring it and kicking the can down the road, and having these ego contracts, big bonus money, big salary, and can't afford it and got to cut the guy. and the guy can still play, and you got to cut him. You know, the Bengals have done a pretty good job salary cap wise in terms of philosophically saying, okay, I'm going to give you a good amount of money up front. That should make you happy, should make your representatives happy, your investment advisor happy. Go ahead and invest it. You know, make a good bit of money. It's yours. And then as the bonus money is deferred, the length of the contract, the bonus money goes down and the salaries go up. So say Trey's what, $15.8 million, $16.2 million salary, I think this year, you know, put 15, 20 million into it. Low to mid 30 million that he get this year. And now even it out where you're paying high 20s, $30 million a year for whatever length of time the contract is, and you know, level cap counts on a yearly basis. And I think that's what the Bengals have done such a good job of. They're $6 million over the cap. There are two teams in the NFL that are over 60 million over the cap. You know, and these franchises with these ego contracts and a lot of publicity, you know, and press conferences and parties and celebrations. And then all of a sudden, the reality is can't afford that money on the back end of that contract. That dude's gone, and he can still play. So now you got a hangover, you know, from that big party that you had with that contract. The structure wasn't right. You know, it was irresponsibly structured. And you get guys out there in the market that are good football players, but the contract was irresponsible. The Bengals have done a pretty good job of leveling those cap counts, and like you said earlier, you know, signing the guys they signed: Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. You know, Joe Burrow for an average of 50 million a year, say. Jamar Chase an average of 40 million a year. T. Higgins an average of 28.75 million a year. My gosh, man! You know how
did they do it? Do you know how? Because one of the things that most people don't know about, and I don't know enough about, is that when you guarantee money on a contract, you got to put that money in escrow.
Yep.
It's like you don't write an IOU, you write a check that goes in some account in New York City that sits there for that player. So that player knows that money is theirs and it's guaranteed. And for some people, you know, for the Denver Broncos now with the Walmart money behind it, that's not an issue. For Mike Brown and the Bengals, they still don't know where they're coming up. I'm saying they've got to have, they had to have written at least $100 million worth of checks this year on guaranteed money, right? And who knew? I'll just say that. Who knew? Who knew they could do that?
I mean, with the handful of players, you're talking over $110 million, you know, contract. It's like, what? Again, I don't know how much of that, excuse me, is guaranteed. I mean, I know the bonus money is. I'm not sure how the salaries were structured. I'm not sure how the structure of the contract was formulated. But I do know one thing. Katie knows what she's doing, man. Katie Blackburn is as good a capologist as there is in the National Football League, and she's highly regarded by other people around the league in terms of how she gets it done in terms of getting these contracts done.
She's so good, and Troy is fantastic. You know, two lawyers there in that family.
Yep.
Their daughters are pretty damn good too. There's some talented people in that Blackburn family. So I'm happy about it. I am, but I think that as a fan base, we also have to sit back and say, all right, this is what has happened, and this is what your expectations are. Coach Golden, we'll see how much talent he has with the ability to create something that doesn't take high-end talent. So I don't think you'll see the Bengals playing a lot of man coverage. I think you'll see them blitzing a little bit more because they won't have all-stars at other defensive tackle or edge players to be able to get a four-man pass rush with just pressure with Hendrickson. If they keep Hendrickson, then that's great. But it also is going to be – it's just going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher, And the protection is going to continue to be a problem for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and that's where I think, they're going to continue to examine how they can get better in the interior of their offensive and defensive lines. Like you mentioned, Chris, the protection for Joe Burrow. We know that a pocket being formed for a quarterback, there's two facets to it. There's forming a pocket and keeping the width of the pocket for the quarterback, and then there's the depth of the pocket. And if the pocket depth isn't appropriate, you can't see. People are in his face. I mean, forget about he might be able to escape a guy and climb and either run or throw the football, but man, he can't manipulate that pocket if people are in his face, and he can't see the middle of the football field. He can't determine how tight is that linebacker to my tight end coming across the middle line. All the depth, everything's distorted. So I think in terms of running the football, like we talked about, they get better in that area, running the football, and then when they do throw the football, firming that pocket up and forming a good pocket for Joe Burrow to take advantage of, because he got hit way too many times last year, and he's a tough kid. I mean, there's no question about it. And I think his teammates definitely respect that toughness. But man, that's not good business to have your stud quarterback getting pounded like that.
Yeah, we've seen this team without him a few times. It's not nearly as much fun. And the other part of this is that when you invest a lot in a handful of players, it's a long season now. I mean, 17 games, and then you're going to tack on, if you make a run in the playoffs, another 3 or 4. That's a long way to expect all 4 of those guys to stay healthy. And if 2 of them get hurt or 3 of them get hurt, basically your season's over at that point. So it's a high risk, high reward. We know they're great players. We know they're the cornerstone of the franchise. And if the Bengals are going back to the Super Bowl, it's going to be due in large part to those 4 guys staying healthy, having the kind of years they're capable of, and then being surprised, right? Being surprised with some draft choices, some second, third, fourth, fifth round guys that can end up playing, because on this Bengals team, they will have to play, and they will have to play a major role.
Agreed. And that has been the case. And for the most part, they've had some success in that area. And they've got, of the guys that they're re-signing, like we talked about, quite a few of them are their own. And, Jamar Chase was a 5th round pick and 5th pick of the draft, I should say, 5th pick of the draft in 2021. T. Higgins was the 33rd pick of the draft in 2020, as Joe Burrow was the first pick of the draft. T was the first pick of the 2nd round. They re-signed Mike Gesicki. Now, he wasn't a draft pick of the Bengals, but he comes in as a 2nd round pick out of Penn State. And they signed him 3 years, $25.5 million. B.J. Hill is not originally drafted by the Bengals. He comes from the Giants, but he signs 3 years for $33 million. So guys that they've not only drafted, but they picked up. B.J. Hill by a trade, maybe one of the greatest in NFL history, Billy Price for B.J. Hill. But, getting Gesicki in free agency. Cody Ford, another one of their own that they re-signed. Joseph Osai on the edge. Cam Sample was beaten up a little bit, injuries last year, but they re-signed him. So there's a mix there. And I found this interesting, Chris. Unrestricted free agency deals that I looked at, and I might have missed something, and there might have been more signings since I looked at it, but I just looked at it here yesterday. There's only been one unrestricted free agency deal of 5 years. That was Will Freeze. There were 6 free agency deals of 4 years. The Bengals have 2 of them at the wide receiver position. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, both of them signed 4-year deals. They have 2 of the 6 4-year deals that have been offered in free agency. 45 3-year deals, and then 40 2-year deals, and 272 1-year deals. So, I mean, teams are saying now, look, this idea about having these long contracts, loading that back end, has put us in salary cap jail. We talked about some franchises that are $60 million or more over the cap. So now it's like, okay, 1-year deal, prove it, reprove yourself. We'll see if we can work something out. The Bengals with that draft, develop, retain kind of thing, they're okay. We believe it. We identified them, we drafted them, we developed them, we retained them. They gave Joe Burrow an extension before he became a free agent. They give Jamar Chase and T. Higgins 4-year deals. I mean, that's pretty significant. Mike Gesicki got one of those 3-year deals. There were 45 of those. Mike Gesicki got one. B.J. Hill got one. So, and then Cody Ford got a 2-year deal. There were 40 of those given out. This is on a league-wide basis now. And then, obviously, they've got their share of 1-year deals, but 272 1-year deals around the National Football League. I think teams are maybe learning their lesson a little bit about going over the cap so far. And like Philadelphia, they got to cut half their defense. They have to let go half of their defensive football team, because of the cap issues, and can't go out there and and play the market at all.
No, it is, but it's a there's a reason to do it this way. There's no doubt. I for me personally, I would continue to go all in. I know everybody's going to be looking for the Bengals to draft defense, and they probably could use an edge player. And there's some really good defensive players in this draft that right about where they're going to end up picking. But I would do exactly what you talked about earlier, which is shore up the inside. I think that if we've never really seen Joe Burrow with a chance to play the way that we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs play, and Patrick Mahomes sat there for a long time and with that interior, I call them the wall, that interior 3, because you can help on edges. Most quarterbacks, when you talk to them, if they're going to get pressure, they would prefer it to be edge pressure because they can manipulate that. They can drop back to 11 yards deep, stand there, give that the target, and then step up. But if there's nowhere to step up, just as you were talking about, that it really does create a problem. I personally think that Joe is so magical inside the pocket that if that were a little bit more shored up, and I know the temptation is to always go after the tackles and you pay the big money to the tackles, but it doesn't mean you can't draft guards, because typically if you're drafting in the second round or even late in the first round, you could trade back in this draft or whatever. You can get the best guard, whoever that is in this group, at the end of the first round, in the middle of the second round sometimes, because that's a position that people don't consider to be as high. I think when I watched Joe Burrow, if you had that interior protection where he could step up and manipulate and take some time to see down the field, I don't know what you'd do with this Bengals passing game.
I hear that. I agree 100,000%. They did address the interior. Lucas Patrick was signed to a 1-year, $2.1 million deal to play in the interior. He's been in the league 9 years. They also signed an interior defensive tackle, TJ Slayton Jr., to a 2-year deal for $15 million. So they wanted to address those 2 areas that we talk about. But I agree. There are some veteran players, left out there in the secondary market, but Brandon Scherf, a little long in the tooth, interior offensive lineman. A lot of the real good ones have signed, but Will Hernandez from Arizona is still out there. You've got Tristan Colon from Arizona is out there as well. Dalton Risner, who's been Reisner, I think it might be Reisner, pretty vocal about, I want to play for the Cincinnati Bengals as an interior offensive lineman. You got guys like that from an offensive line standpoint. Defensive tackles, though, Chris, man, it's been picked over, Obviously teams realize how important that position is, but you got a guy like Calais Campbell still out there who is long in the tooth, to be kind, but still, he re-upped. He signed. So the only one that Raekwon Davis is out there.
I just don't think you can afford another big contract. So
Yeah.
if I ran the Bengals draft here, I probably would try to sign Hendrickson, and then I would try to trade back. I would want as many bodies coming to this training camp out of this draft as I could. And I understand I'm probably passing up a really good first round prospect, but I would rather have 6 or 7 players in rounds 2 through 5 that give me a chance, because they're going to have to play. That's the thing I can't emphasize enough. If you're ever going to go to training camp and watch a team play, this is the year, because these guys that are in this draft class for the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be starters and are going to be playing a lot of football, especially as we get to the back end of the season and these 17 games and maybe going to 18 someday, that you're going to have guys that are currently, you have no plans. You're going to go to training camp and go, that guy's never going to play.
Yeah.
The guy's going to play. He's going to play. So get as many good ones as you can.
Yeah. And like you say, they got 6 draft picks. They gave up their 7th in a trade for Herbert, who now is with the Indianapolis Colts, the running back. So I think your point is well taken. They've done that before. They've accumulated extra picks. They like to have more than 7, and if they can, maybe I don't know if they maybe move back in the first round. They could, but somewhere in the first 3 rounds, move back and get an extra pick and load up as many draft picks as you possibly can. I agree with you, because we'll talk about the draft, as we get closer to the draft. I'd love to get your perspective on that, because you guys at Pro Football Focus are all over it. I mean, you guys could be the general manager for any football team with respect to the draft coming up. But I don't think it's necessarily, and I guess it's too early to really say, but I mean, Hall of Famers, how do you know? You don't know if the guy projects to be a Hall of Famer. But I do feel like this draft is pretty deep, Chris. I mean, I'm not saying that there are superstar, 1 through 20 is big time, 1 through 10 maybe, there might be a drop off, but that level of player is there for quite a while. I mean, there's not another drop off. There's some depth there, isn't there?
There is. And I'll just talk generalities. The players at the top, are really good players. The top 2 or 3 guys. I think Cam Ward's going to be a really nice player. Hunter's going to be a really nice player, probably a corner. Carter is going to be, he looks like Micah Parsons already.
Right.
But and then I kind of went about players 3 through about 12, and I went, I was thinking this is a bad draft, because it doesn't, like, you don't expect that kind of drop off, right? And it's not that they're bad players. They're just not, usually there's 10 or 12 that you just kind of go, man, any team would take these guys. But then when you get to around where the Bengals are picking, in the teens, it starts to really level off. Like, there's not that drop from 8, 9 down into 15 through 25. Like, I sort of look at, like, almost 4 or 5 through 25 is kind of the same level of players. So if I've got to drop back from whatever it was, 17, I think they are,
yes,
to 24 and 25, or 24 and, the beginning of the second round, I would be willing to do that in this draft. A lot of offensive linemen, a lot of sort of pass rushing kind of guys. But yeah, I would be willing to do that.
Yeah, and the 2 areas that we're talking about, they're the tackles and the edge rushers are always a premium. I mean, people are, teams are going to gobble those up very, very quickly. But the interior guys, the centers, the guards, the defensive tackles, it seems to be plentiful there. There are the stars. There are the G-men, from Michigan, the tandem inside there, Graham and Grant. There are others, obviously, but there's a whole bunch. I mean, you can get good interior players, it looks like, into the 4th and 5th round. I mean, there's definitely people that belong on NFL rosters. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and those guys are good, but they're not J.J. Watt or Aaron Donald coming out of this class.
Right.
That's not what they are. So
Right.
always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon.
Safe travels, my man. I can't imagine how many air miles you put on. It's pretty remarkable, but safe travels.
And a big assignment today. We're going to our 6-year-old granddaughter's cheerleading tonight. She's cheering for her school, and so we're gonna go watch that.
Yeah, that's in the blood too. Your lovely wife.
Oh yeah, it is. Cheerleading is not something we take lightly around here. It's we're motivated for that.
Wife, daughter, granddaughter. Oh my gosh, man, it's a family tradition. There is no question about it. That's big stuff, Cris. Enjoy the family. Enjoy your time in Florida. Get a little fun in the sun. Appreciate your time as always, my man.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you, Dave.
Same here, Cris. Dave Lapham here. While games are over for the season, there's no off-season for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham or First Star Logistics. First Star Logistics gave away great prizes during the season, which will continue with exclusive content in the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. So please, do me a favor. Subscribe to In the Trenches, hit the like button, and visit the First Star Media Group YouTube channel for exclusive content and special giveaways.